This is Corolla DeVille, and you're watching Inkwife TV. Today's focus is another cover-up. I am working on the inside of my coworker's arm to cover up a whole bunch of his old tattoos. Here's what the outside of his arm is looking like, and it was time to get onto the sweet meat of the inside portion of his arm. Now, the cool thing about this whole tattoo is that I did not show him what I was going to do, and you really can't tell what it is because it just looks like a mess of nonsense with the stencil laid on top of all of the older tattoos. Anywho, the point is that he did not know what I was tattooing on him. So it was a little nerve-wracking for me, but I figured he would probably like it, and he says he does, so that's great. Anyway, looking at what I'm doing in the tattoo, because it's such a dark cover-up, the first thing that I begin with is putting in all of the shadows and creating the shapes with a mag and black ink. One of the hardest things about this type of cover-up is there's a lot of movement in the tattoo that I'm putting over it. So the stencil is very detailed, and it kind of goes in all directions. But there's so much information from the old tattoo behind it. It was difficult not to lose the stencil and to keep track of where I am. So when I'm working on a cover-up like this, I'm very careful about the direction that I'm wiping, to make sure that I don't wipe off some important information that I'm going to need later. But once I get all of the black in there and I can see where the basic shapes are, then it's not a problem. You just got to make sure that when you're putting in your first level of detail that you get everything in there, all the information in there that you're going to need for the rest of the tattoo. To create this design, I was looking for really detailed pictures that had a lot of dark and light contrast to them, because you're going to need that for a cover-up, especially when there's such dark ink behind it that's really going in all sorts of directions. Anyway, I found a picture that I liked, and it met all of the demands that I had, and then I broke the one picture up into boxes and sort of moved them around, and you can see that there's boxes placed on the arm, and you can see a bit of an eye in part of the stencil, and there's an eye on that other side in the other box. But what it does is that will break up the photo to where it will cover more of the background and give the new tattoo more visual interest. And then once all of these the boxes on this part of the tattoo are completed, I will put a very, very dark geometric pattern in the background that will go the rest of the way around the arm and complete this half sleeve cover up top. I'm showing most of the detail on this large box, which has the most, it's the best looking, it's got the most information on it, and it's the most interesting by far, simply because it's got the eye and the nose, and if you can start to make out, there's some fingers in there as well. Some of the shapes of the old tattoo did work to help with, they just happen to lay in place very well with the shapes on the new tattoo. So that was pleasant. There's a good shadow that goes down either, you know, on one side of the nose and a little bit of shadow on the bottom, and that helped a little bit too. So when you're doing a cover up, if you can use those shapes that are already in the background to the benefit of the new tattoo, keep that in mind. See if you can work some of the old design together in with the new design. Obviously I couldn't do that on most of this tattoo. A lot of the lines are just helter-skelter going everywhere, but where it helped, it was really nice, and I'm just, you know, pointing it out that you can do that. You can use the shapes of your old tattoo to help you form a new one. As I continue to fill in the background, you can finally start to see a little bit of the picture coming together. It's starting to make a little bit more sense. There's a couple of eyes, and then there's like 5 or 6 hands that are kind of wrapped around her face. This top portion, my hand was in the way for pretty much all of it, so I just did a really quick sped up portion to go, yay, I worked on it up top. You can't see anything, but you know, there it is, it happened. There's more fingers up there in the little top box. Once I had finished with the black ink, it was time to go in with some gray. The purpose of the gray is that it will create an even background tone that will bring the skin tone in together with the tone of the old tattoos that are still showing through. But going in with some true grays, it just helps balance out so that the old gray tattoos in the background start to disappear. Now, the whole color scheme of this tattoo has to be on the dark side. If you saw the original photograph, it's a much lighter picture, but because it's being used as a cover-up, it's just going to have to be on the darker side. But once I've laid in my gray tones and the skin tone is more even, then I can go in lastly with lighter grays and whites and lay that very, very gently on top of the gray ink, and it will create the highlights that are needed so that it will have all the shape and detail that I'm wanting. When I'm putting in the black ink and the gray ink, I'm running my machine at about 5.2 or 5.4 volts, somewhere in there, in the low 5s. Because the black and the gray are both what I consider to be the base layers of the tattoo. Everything at the beginning needs to be covered with between a black and a gray tone, just to make the skin tone a little bit more even. So I run the machine, what for me is a little bit on the higher side, for those base tones, because I want them to go in just a little bit deeper. And the first time you run your mag over the skin, you're creating little perforations all in it, and so the ink doesn't go in as well, you know, the first time you run over it, but then the second and the third time it goes in deeper and better. So I run my machine just a little bit higher when I'm putting in my base colors, but then when I'm going to go back in with the lighter gray and the white tones, I will turn that machine down, first of all because I want it sitting on top of the ink I've already put in, so I don't want to be hitting the skin very hard. The second reason is that, like I said, because the skin has already been perforated, those lighter colors are going to lay in there more easily, because the skin is already opened up and ready to take those tones in. So most of my dark grays are in, and I'm now beginning my highlights with the lighter grays. There's still a few gaps showing up on the fingers especially, but when I get up into there, I'll work with those dark and medium grays again to even it all out. You can start to see that everything showing through the skin is beginning to disappear. It's a lot lighter, but we're gonna get there where it pretty much disappears. And when it heals, if there's anything left, I will just throw another session on top of it lightly, and it really ought to go away. By the time this whole tattoo is done, it will not look like a cover-up at all, I don't think. It'll just look really cool. You can see how now that I'm putting those light grays in there, it really begins to create shape in the face, where before it was a little bit flat. A lot of what I'm trying to do is just even up the tone that is still showing through in the background just a smidge, and to muddy all of the outer lines of the old tattoo, so that instead of it being, you know, a hard line, it just sort of fades in and out of the background. Now I'm putting in some white, and my machine's probably running around 4.8 volts. Very lightly, just gently tapping the skin. I'm working between light grays and whites now, trying to lay some final highlights onto the nose and onto the face. When I'm recording this video, the tattoo is 2 days old, and I'm happy to say that it is healing fine. So even though I've gone over it many times, I mean, probably I'm going to be doing about 4 layers on any area of this tattoo. So it's being gone over 4 or 5 or 6 times in most of these areas, but because the machine runs, you know, low, it's not overworking it and it's not tearing it up. So it's healing really good, especially for on the inside of the arm. I always worry about inside of the arm tattoos, especially near the armpit. Just because, you know, you work out, you sweat and stuff, and it gets irritated and it rubs against your shirt and your side, and those inner arm tattoos are easy to get irritated, but his seems to be doing very well, and we will see more of it in the next video because it will be healed. All I get finished today is this one main square that I'm working on, and the rest of the tattoo is going to have to wait a couple of weeks, but we'll go back in there, maybe add a little bit more to this one, finish the other boxes, and then the last time we go in for a session, we will put that background in there and call this half sleeve done. I'm sorry my hand is in the way, but I really wanted to show a few of the details on the eye. I'm working with a 5-round liner right now, and I'm still running my machine around 4.8 or 4.9 volts because, you know, it's a liner, but I barely want it tapping the skin. It's everywhere. I draw little details on there. The white just lays on top very nicely, and I did not want to overdo the white and make it look weird. But I'm running the machine just zigzagging back and forth very lightly over the skin, you can see, to create extra little subtle shine on the skin and reflections, and to give that final bit of shape to bring the new tattoo out on top of the old tattoos. Now you can really see what it's gonna be turning into. The last thing I wanted to do is add a turquoise line all around the box. Each of these little rectangles will have a thick turquoise line around them, which will create a really cool separation between the tattoos and the geometric background. I may need to go over these lines twice to make them really, really saturated so that they glow, but that is fine. I want it to look like the boxes all have like a glowing haze around the edge when we are finished with it. With those last few details, we are finished. And here's what we got in session 1. Everything else you can totally see through, but we're going to fix that up in the next session. Stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week.